All right, we have an update to my standard deck, and I am excited to share with you. So, in the past, I have played Black Green Dreadfeast with Dreadfeast Demon, but I have since cut Dreadfeast Demon, so we're left with a Black Green Rock deck that is full of ramp and threats. That's all you need. Oh, and also removal. So let's run down the list. So we have our one drop is a eye twitch. So 1/1 flyer for one, and you get to learn. So we'll talk about what we'll be learning about when we talk about the sideboard. Stay tuned. We have Prosperous Innkeeper as a way to ramp and also gain you life as well. Reclusive Taxidermist, also a way to ramp mana of any color, and also in the long game it can sometimes become a 4/4 as well. Not too bad. Next we have our 3-drop Fell Stinger, a 3/2 death touch, so excellent on the block, excellent on the attack, and also it has the exploit trigger, so you can exploit itself or a different creature to have target player draw 2 cards and gain or lose 2 life. I have not used this on an opponent to kill them, but that could be the option should the opportunity arise. This is more so a early beater and also a way to draw cards in matchups where seeing more cards is better. Newest addition to the deck number 1 is Graveyard Trespasser, so you'll notice no Cemetery Prowler. They're both 3-drops. The Prowler helps your creatures and other spells cost 1 less, but this creature actually is a 3/3 that has built-in protection. The Ward, discard a card, is a pretty strong deterrent of trying to remove it, and if it is removed, then you get to 2-for-1 your opponent. It also basically can become a 4/4 if it gets transformed, and it also has incidental life gain because it can exile creature cards in any graveyard. So a 3/3 should be a essentially be a 4/3, and then when it flips over it's a 4/4, but it can essentially become a 6/4, which is a lot of value at the 3 mana spot. I don't know why this card is still a crap rare. So by cutting Cemetery Prowler, we have made this deck a little bit more affordable. Also added to the deck is Ulvenwald Oddity, a 4/4 for 4 with trample and haste. You can flip it over if you have the mana to make it an 8/8 that gives all your creatures a boost and also trample and haste as well. So the Graveyard Trespasser and the Ulvenwald Oddity, I got the idea to add these cards because I played against them and they were actually pretty good. The Trespasser has been an all-around better threat at the 3-drop. The Oddity has made the matchup against Control so much better because that haste, you can come in and destroy a Planeswalker that your opponent tapped out to cast. It has Trample, so it gets through most defenses to do damage to Planeswalkers and players. And it has flipped on multiple occasions just to put a quick lights out to your opponent. Next we have Binding the Old Gods, so a catch-all removal spell at the 4 spot. It also ramps you up and also can give your creatures death touch if you want to sneak them through for more damage like your 1/1s. But mostly a removal spell, ramp you up, thin your deck out to draw your threats. As you see, they start at the 3 spot, but moving up to the 5 spot, we have Junji, the Midnight Sky. So a 5/5 for 5, flying. Not many people will see at first glance, but it also has menace, so you need 2 creatures that can block it. Otherwise, it's going to sneak through for damage. Um, Also, 2 really versatile modes when it dies. So the first mode is each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life. So you can, as your opponent is trying to get rid of your threats, you can knock their hand out and put them into top deck mode and lose some life in the process. Or you can get back a non-dragon from your graveyard, all of which are good options. I have brought back iTwitch to get the learn trigger and be a blocker for flyers. Brought back Prosperous Innkeeper if I need to get more life gain. Haven't really brought back the Taxidermist, but I could if I wanted to. Brought back Fell Stinger when we needed more defense or we wanted to also draw cards. Brought back the Trespasser because it's difficult to deal with and does a lot of work. Brought back the Ulvenwald Oddity because it also can attack right away or transform if you have the mana the following turn. We've also brought back our good friend Toxrill the Corrosive. So this creature started off in the sideboard in the original build, but since the standard format has mostly creature-based decks, Toxrill got pushed to the main. This has a lot of words on it, so I'll read them to you slowly. At the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. Whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. And you can pay a blue and a black to sacrifice a slug to draw a card. So, basically, if your opponent does not have an answer to Toxrill, you can count on their creatures slowly biting the dust, and you getting creatures in the process. And if you have an Innkeeper out, you also gain life in the process. And then lastly, we have for the business spells in the main, the Meathook Massacre as a catch-all board wipe that also can gain you life and deal damage to your opponents. The land base is pretty much self-explanatory. We have swamps and forests. We also have a plains. We will see why in the near future. We have 2 Field of Ruin as a way to get rid of non-basic land threats, such as ones that turn into creatures. And we also have 4 Deathcap Glade to add black or green. Running 2 manlands, Lair of the Hydra. The Darkboar Pathway, another black-green utility land. And then with the new set, we're running 2 Boseiju Who Endures and 1 Takenuma Abandoned Mire. Since they're legendary, I feel like this is the acceptable amount. You do not want to draw multiples of legendary lands and not be able to play them. Alright, so we go to our learning board. So things that we can learn, we have 1 environmental sciences to ramp, or not ramp you, but filter your land out of your deck, gain you some life in the process, hit those land drops. 1 containment breach to get rid of artifacts or enchantments. And then 2 mascot exhibition as a way to close games out and dump more threats on the field. And also 1 necrotic fumes as a removal spell. For the non-lessons, we have recently added Valky, God of Lies, as a way to Against creature decks, it gives you information about what's in your opponent's hand, and it also soaks up a removal spell because if they want to get that creature back before it transforms into that creature to attack them and ruin their day, uh, they'll have to cast a spell to do that. And then they'll have less spells for your other threats. And also, since we have mana fixing from the innkeeper and the other person, the taxidermist, uh, casting the planeswalker aside is not impossible and has been done so in the past. And that can take over the game pretty quickly. Speaking of other planeswalkers, we have sideboard 2 Lolth, Spider Queen, just as a way to board in against control decks where you want to be able to draw cards and keep up with your opponent's ability to draw cards and threats and answers. Also can dump creatures on the battlefield as a threat. Those creatures also have reach, so it can trade with any dragon that has 4 toughness. I have not used the ultimate ability, but I could if I ever got there. We also have Go Blank in the sideboard as well. This is an update to what was formerly Duress. Rather than duress someone, the plan is to make them discard 2 cards and exile their graveyard. So against graveyard decks, this is your graveyard removal. Against mid-range to control decks, this is also a card that you can shove in their face, and if they have a counter for it, great. If they don't, then you get to 2 for 1 them and exile their graveyard. And the reason for the planes is we have Path of Peril, great card to have that has 2 good modes. We have Path of Peril with the 3 mana cost. You can destroy creatures with CMC converted mana value of 2 or less, so it usually spares most of your creatures while doing a lot of damage to your opponent's creatures. And if you really need to, you can pay 6 mana to destroy all creatures as well. And so the idea is playing board wipes, you can slow down your opponent, and then you should be able to recover faster by either having a big threat or being able to draw a big threat. And then lastly, against control, formerly in the main board, we have sideboard Cragplate Baloth. Can't be countered, hexproof haste for 7 mana. And if you have 3 extra mana hanging around, which sometimes you might, you can kick it and it becomes 10/10 hexproof haste. And so 10/10 hasty damage is kind of surprising, especially when you can't counter it or touch it with spells or abilities. This one time I top decked it after I thought I was going to lose the game and attacked my opponent for exacties, and it was good times. So basically, Cragplate Baloth and Lolth for control matchups, and then Valky, Path of Peril for aggressive matchups, and then Go Blank for mid-range and graveyard decks. So there you have the updated version of Black-Green. Now it's no Dreadfeast, so we have a rock-based deck with a lot of versatility and utility, and I am liking how it's going. I recently got back to the Diamond rank for the first time in a while, and this is the current list, and if you want to see how I got here, there's previous versions that I will link as well, in case you want a way to follow and maybe learn about deck building and crafting. All right, let's play a game.